uttama shloke
Bhaktir bhavati naishtiki.
bhaktir bhavati naishtiki.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, entitled Creation, Chapter 7, Son of Drona Punish, text number 6. Anartha
Anartha
Upasamam Sakshat Anarthopasamam Sakshat
Anarthopasamam sakshat
Bhakti Yogam
Bhakti Yogam
Adhokshaje Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje
Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Ajanataha
Vidwan Lokasya Janato
Lokasya Jananto Vidvams
Chakre Satvata Samhita Chakre Satvata Samhita Anarthopasamam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhita Anarthopasamam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhita Anarthopasamam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhita
Anarthopasamam
sakshat
Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Ajanto Vidvams Chakre
Satvata Samhitam Anarthopasamam sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam
Anarthopasamam sakshat
Anarthopasamam sakshat
Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya
Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam
Anarthopasamam sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam Anarthopasamam sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams
Chakre
Satvata Samhitam Online? Okay, sorry. You cannot see without? Okay, no problem. Anybody online? Anarthopasamam sakshat Bhakti Yogam Adhokshaje Lokasya Janato Vidvams
चक्रे सात्वत संहिताम् अनर्थोपशमं साक्षात् भक्ति योगम अधोक्षजे लोकस्य जानतो विद्वांस चक्रे सात्वत संहिताम् Anartha, things which are superfluous. Upasamam,
Upashamam,
mitigation.
mitigation.
Sakshat,
Sakshat,
directly.
directly.
Bhakti yogam,
Bhakti yogam,
the linking process of devotional service.
the linking process of devotional service.
Adhokshaje,
Adokshaje,
unto the transcendence.
unto the transcendence.
Lokasya,
Lokasya,
of the general mass of men.
of the general mass of men.
Ajanataha,
Janataha,
those who are unaware of.
those who are unaware of.
Vidwan,
Vidwan,
the supremely learned.
the supremely learned.
Chakre,
Chakre,
compiled.
compiled.
Satvata,
Satvata,
in relation with the supreme truth.
in relation with the supreme truth.
Samhitam,
Samhitam,
Vedic literature.
Vedic literature.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Translation: the material miseries of the living entity which are superfluous to him can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature which is in relation to the supreme truth. Translation with repetition. The material miseries of the living entity
The material miseries of the living entity,
which are superfluous to him
which are superfluous to him,
can be directly mitigated
can be directly mitigated
by the linking process of devotional service.
by the linking process of devotional service.
But the mass of people do not know this,
But the mass of people do not know this,
and therefore the learned Vyasadeva
and therefore the learned Vyasadeva
compiled this Vedic literature
compiled this Vedic literature,
which is in relation to the supreme truth.
which is in relation to the supreme truth.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead. This statement suggests that the complete unit of the personality of Godhead includes his parts and parcels also. He saw therefore his different energies, namely the internal energy, the marginal energy, and the external energy. He also saw his different plenary portions and parts of the plenary portions, namely his different incarnations also. And he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls, who are bewildered by the external energy. And at last he saw the remedial measures for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is a great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Such mitigation of material affection does not wait for development of transcendental knowledge. Rather, knowledge is dependent on devotional service for the ultimate realization of the supreme truth. You sense the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are in this section of Bhagavatam where we are seeing, after the long conversation that Narad Muni and Vedavyas had, the transcendental conversation, Vedavyas sat down for meditation. And in meditation, what he saw, we are trying to see and understand. As we saw in the last verse, the purport, first line, Prabhupada writes, the root cause of suffering by the materialistic living beings is pointed out with remedial measures, which are to be undertaken, and also the ultimate perfection to be gained. So in his vision, he could see the root cause of the suffering by all of us in this material world when we have accepted this temporary body. He also could see what is the remedial measures which are to be undertaken. And the third thing, also the ultimate perfection to be gained. And continuing further in today's verse, it says, Anartha upasamam sakshat bhakti yogam adhokshaje lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhita. The word anartha is translated by Prabhupada, things which are superfluous. And things which are superfluous, we are subjected to them without our choice. We don't want them, but they are forced upon us. The material miseries. Nobody wants to be put into a condition where he is subjected to misery, or his condition is miserable. He is subjected to difficulties. But material world doesn't spare anyone. So anartha, that is the miseries which are forced, inflicted upon us, or the miseries, anartha. Upasamam means it can be mitigated. Mitigation, Prabhupada is writing. So these miseries, these difficulties which are forced, which are enforced on us, can be mitigated sakshad bhakti yogam adhokshaja, directly. The word sakshad is translated by Prabhupada as directly. Anarthopasamam sakshad bhakti yogam adhokshaja. Mind you, the word used here is bhakti yogam. Bhakti is devotional service and yogam is the process, the linking process. The linking process of devotional service with whom? Adhokshaje. Anarthopasamam sakshad bhakti yogam adhokshaje. So you are suffering in this material world. The suffering is actually superfluous. You don't deserve to go through the suffering, but you don't know what is the solution. When it happens, you go and look for solutions in material world. Here, Vedavyas is telling, anartha upasamam saksha. These anarthas, these miseries, these difficulties, these things which are superfluous to us can be mitigated by directly engaging in the process of devotional service, bhakti yogam, to adhokshaje, to the Supreme Lord. Lokasya ajananto vidvams. However, most of the people in this material world don't know about this. Lokasya ajanato. When a person is suffering from a disease, he probably goes to a doctor to find out what is the cause of this disease. He himself doesn't know, but he is experiencing the pain. He is undergoing the pain which is excruciating. Helplessly, he goes to a hospital and he tries to find out the remedy for that from an experienced doctor who is trained in that. And when he diagnoses that this is the disease and the symptom of that is you are experiencing this excruciating pain, he also gives the solution. Lokasya ajanato vidvams. So here the doctor is vidvams, the supremely learned. Who's that supremely learned person? It's Vedavyas. Lokasya ajanato vidvams chakre satvata samhita. He compiled the satvata samhita. The samhita, or the Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Actually, verses like this, of course, this verse is an answer to the question which the sages of Naimisharanya had asked. Why did Vedavyas compile this Srimad Bhagavatam? Why did Srimad Bhagavatam come into existence? What was the need? What was the necessity? And this verse, the translation and purport, every single letter, every single word is important. So the translation is, the material miseries of the living entity, anartha, which are superfluous. the material miseries of the living entity which are superfluous to him, is all one word which is called anartha, can be directly mitigated, shakshad upasamam, by the linking process of devotional service, bhakti yogam adhokshaje, by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people, lokasya, do not know this, ajanato, and therefore the learned Vyasadev, Vidwams, compiled this Vedic literature, Chakre Samhitam, which is in relation to the Supreme Truth, Sattvata. The genius of Prabhupada, he captures the essence of the verse so wonderfully. And we will see that in the verse as well as in the purport, and how this verse is so relevant for all of us who are going through these miseries, yet we don't want to accept the solution. Or having accepted the solution, we take it half-heartedly. We don't want to do it fully. That is so unfortunate. Let's understand the verse one more time. The translation, we will read it once more. You can repeat. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this. And therefore the learned Vyasadev compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the Supreme Truth. Now in this translation, I have highlighted few words. If you pay attention to this translation, first thing is the material miseries. First thing which the Vedic literature tells us, it shows a mirror, a reflection of our life, that this place is not a place of happiness. The idea that we have that we can live here happily ever after with all our near and dear ones and can enjoy eternally is thwarted by this simple but naked truth that this world is miserable. Krishna himself says dukkhalaya. We may live a life of denial, saying that no, I can make things, I can patch up, I can do, I can prove, I can change. No, but it's not true. The material miseries come. So the word material miseries is something which we have to pay attention, because this is related to my life and I am going through these sufferings. I am going through these miseries. The material miseries of the living entity which are superfluous to him. But the next word which Prabhupada is using, or the Vyasadeva is using, these are superfluous. These are not, I'm not meant to go through this. This we are not aware of it. We think maybe the human life is meant to go through birth, death, old age and disease, and we are supposed to die. Or maybe there are miseries like Adidaivic, Adibhautik and Adhyatmic comes. We have to suffer, we have to endure. There is no choice. No, this is superfluous to us. This is not, we are not meant to go through this. Okay? Miseries are coming in a place which I am thinking is a happy place, and this is not, I am not supposed to go through this. Then what should be the solution? Can be directly mitigated. Shakshad upasamam. By what? By a very difficult process, by a complicated process, by the linking process of devotional service. Bhakti yogam adhokshaje. But unfortunately, we fall in the mass of people. We are that category of people who do not know this. The mass of people do not know this. There is one statement of Prabhupada somewhere, I don't remember, maybe in the class or conversation he had mentioned. There are people who are unfortunate in this world who do not know about devotion, devotional life. They've taken the rare human form of life, yet they are so unfortunate that they don't know about this. But even more unfortunate than them is those who take up to this process of devotion, yet give it up, or yet they don't do it properly. Many times, we fall in the second category, where we are aware of it, where we know what is our position, where we know what is the solution, where we know what is the remedy. Yet the diseased state is so strong and acute, it doesn't allow us to take the medication properly. It gives us our own whims and fancies, It asks us to choose from the medication or the remedy suggested by the doctor. The transcendental doctor here, Vedavyas, is telling this is what it is. Actually, the compassion of this great sages are unparalleled in the history. They genuinely feel the compassion of the living entities suffering in the material world, be it Srila Prabhupada, be it Vedavyas. They are able to see it, and they want the general mass of people to come out. That is why actually this is a large plan of the Lord, because the Lord is also having that causeless mercy where He wants all these living entities like all of us who are suffering here to come back home, back to Godhead. And by His causeless mercy, He is giving so many chances. He sends pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada, like Vedavyas is an incarnation. Vedavyas is writing this in the form of this Sattvata Samhita. He is writing, compiling this Vedic literature which is in relation to the Supreme Truth, not ordinary book. And by going through this book, we can revive our lost relationship to the Supreme Lord by directly linking through this process of devotional service. Yet how unfortunate we are, yet how much of laziness we can have in our lives that we still don't wake up. Still it appears to be very burdensome. Any other material things, anything to do with our sense gratification, we happily accept the proposal. We don't question even twice. Yes, let's go for it. Tinge of material sense gratification. What's in it for me? If that is answered properly, and if I know that this is going to satisfy my mind, senses, body in some way or other, I just do it. But when it comes to the actual process by which we can come out of this miseries, we hesitate so much. So if you see the previous verse, actually these verses, as I said, even one class, in 10 classes, 100 classes are insufficient, because there are so many interesting aspects and facets of it. We can try and explore with our limited brain and intelligence and with the limited time that we have, few things. Pay attention to this. If you see the verse previously, the verse was Yaya sammohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manutennartham tatkritam cha abhipadyate. There also the word anartha was there. Paropi manutennartham tatkritam cha abhipadyate. And anartham Prabhupada had translated as things not wanted. Yaya sammohito jiva. When the jiva becomes sammohita, it becomes completely bewildered, delusioned. By what? Atmanam trigunatmakam. By that energy, external energy of the Lord. Paropi, even if it is transcendental, manute nartham, he is accepting all these miseries, and he is considering himself to be material product, and thus going through these miseries, tat kritam chavipadyate, thinking that this is how it is. But it all happens by the influence of the external energy of the Lord, which makes the person think that he is this material body. Prabhupada has translated there anartha as things not wanted, but here Prabhupada is writing the same word anartha, which is used in this verse as well, as superfluous. And the dictionary gives the meaning for superfluous as unnecessary, especially through being more than enough or excess remaining unused. So I was just trying to find out what is this word anartha. And it is not just, sometimes people, when they ask, so how are you, Prabhu? Not good. Why? I'm not able to take up to devotion. Why? Why not? You are not able to take up to devotion? Anartha hai andar. Anartha matlab kaam, krodh, lobh, moh, like that we think. But here the word anartha is used by Prabhupada as superfluous. And as I said, the dictionary meaning of the superfluous, the word superfluous is that it is something which is excess, which is redundant and unused. Very interestingly, this terminology, if you think, it is not just about the bad qualities. It also refers to thing which is excess. And imagine if you have a lot of wealth, just for imagination, may not have, but even if you have a lot of wealth in the bank and it is sitting idle, right? And you're not using it properly. You're not using it properly has a right connotation. If it is not used in the service of the Supreme Lord, then it actually constantly disturbs. It is a disturbing thing in our mind, what to do, where to engage, where to invest, what to do with that, and it becomes an anartha for me. If I have a lot of time, I don't know, I'm just giving one example, nobody has, but just thinking hypothetically. and do not know how to use it. I feel bored. I feel, I do some useless things, whiling away or waste our time in unwanted things. The same excess time becomes anartha for me. So it is not just about having those bad qualities, it is also having this excess things in our life which we don't know how to use. They also become anartha for us. Now, I think in one of the previous classes we were having this discussion. I want to spend some time on anartha, and then we will see how powerful, how interesting, how wonderful this process of bhakti, and how the Lord is so compassionate. So much of compassion the Lord has that He wants us to come back. I don't know if I think I have shared this story multiple times, but nevertheless, there was this story of Akbar and Birbal. And apparently, Birbal, one day in the palace, he said to Akbar that, "Oh Jahanpana, you are actually more superior to even the Supreme Lord." Imagine if somebody makes a statement like this, what will happen to an ordinary conditioned living entity? You will be feeling very happy with it. Maybe you will try to hide your happiness, more superior to the Supreme Lord. And that too, it is not coming from an ordinary fool. It is coming from Birbal. So Akbar, and he is not a pure devotee and he likes this kind of glorification, but he wanted to hide his happiness and emotions. Just for the sake of hearing it clearly from Birbal, he said, "Can you explain how I am more superior to the Supreme Lord?" So that even others also can feel, oh my God, Birbal has given the right logic and argument, and by which he has proven that I am the Supreme Lord, or I am better than, I am superior to the Supreme Lord. It is so joyous inside. So Birbal gave an explanation that imagine if there is a person who is not listening to you, who is not following your orders, who is disobeying you. What are you going to do with him, O Jahanpana? What do you think Akbar would have told? Punishment? Punishment? Akbar told, "I'll throw him out of the kingdom. I have that much of power. If somebody disobeys me, I will throw him out of the kingdom." And Birbal said, "See, the Supreme Lord, even though somebody is not following him, somebody is an atheist, somebody is an agnostic, doesn't believe in the existence of him, still he doesn't throw him away from his kingdom. But you, O Akbar, you are so powerful, you are so great that you can throw the person out of your kingdom, which even the Supreme Lord is not able to do." Akbar felt very happy. Of course, Akbar is slightly foolish, not a devotee, didn't understand what it is. But the point is, the Supreme Lord is so compassionate. He wants us. He is waiting. Come back. Why are you suffering? This doesn't befit you. This doesn't belong to you. But we are suffering. We are going through this. And why we are going through this? Because we are doing a lot of anarthas. What is this word anartha? What does it mean? The 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita very interestingly gives some definitions which will help us to understand how do we do anartha, or how do we know what are anarthas and how we should be careful not to do these anarthas. Chapter 13, if you know, this is called Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. Very interesting title. Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. And the last 2-3 verses that we have been seeing, we are trying to understand how the spirit soul, which is completely different in nature, is interacting with the matter. This is the bewildering thing. I mean, we are seeing we are part and parcel of the Lord. Mamevamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karsati. We are eternally part and parcel of the Lord. How can we interact with the matter? It is like Prabhupada gives the example sometimes like the oil and water, if they are mixed. Have you seen any time oil and water being mixed? You've seen, Ananya? You've seen. It gets mixed fully. What happens? Oil stays on the top. Doesn't matter how much you want to try to mix it, the oil and water cannot be mixed. So then how does this soul interact with the matter? And that is a very interesting thing our scriptures tell us, and that is where the clue lies. Actually, the interaction of the soul with the matter happens through something called mind. And the mind in Sanskrit is known as chittam. Now imagine in a room you have two people, one is a Chinese person and the other one is an Afghani. So he speaks Urdu, the other person speaks Chinese. How will they interact? If they have to interact? By actions. Okay. What is your name? Aryan. Yeah. How will they interact? Google Translator. Yeah. How will they interact? You need an interpreter. You need a translator who knows both the languages. He knows Chinese as well as he knows Afghani. That is why a thing like mind is required, which has the property of the soul as well as the property of matter. Now if you see the property of soul, right? What is the property of soul? Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sat is permanence. Just think permanence, that is cognizance, and Ananda is bliss. And what is matter? Matter, first thing, is asat. The characteristic of matter is asat. Asat means temporary, which is subjected to change. And what is subjected to change? Our bodies, constantly changing. It is temporary, it is not permanent. And now the soul has to interact with the matter, and it is using this mind, right? Now what happens is, when the soul is interacting with the matter with this mind, there are two ways to interact with it. The mind either can be absorbed in the soul, or can be inclined towards this side, or it can be inclined towards this side. Because either it can, the mind can be absorbed in matter, or the mind can be absorbed in the soul. When the mind is absorbed in matter, then that is called materialistic mind. Materialistic mind. And when the mind is absorbed in soul, it is called spiritualized mind. That is why in Bhagavatam or in our Vedic scripture it is mentioned, Manaevahi manushyanam bandhanam moksha karanam. Mind is the cause of bondage or liberation. Not body, not something else, not senses. Because the mind is the medium, or the chittam is the medium by which we interact with this. When the mind is absorbed in matter, then it is materialistic, and it is creating that agitation, fluctuations, disturbance. That is why it is called the vrittis. The vrittis are nothing but the disturbances of mind. When the mind is too much absorbed in matter, it's constantly agitated. It's fickle. It is not steady. But when the mind is absorbed in sat, in permanence, then it is spiritualized. Spiritualized mind doesn't mean it is only attracted to spiritual subject. No. Or it is only attracted to spiritual things. Spiritualized mind means it is absorbed mind, or it is meditative mind. Or meditative mind. Now the important thing that we have to remember in this soul-matter interaction, and there is the mind which is the medium, the concept of happiness. First thing is the soul-matter, and the second thing is the concept of happiness. Now the concept of happiness that mind knows, or mind is trained, is that when the senses meet the sense objects, then that is called happiness. When the senses meet the sense objects, that is called happiness. And where in Bhagavad Gita it is refuted? Yehi tu sansparsaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate te adi antavanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. The definition of happiness in the conditioned state, what the soul knows because of the mind, is that when the senses come in touch with the sense objects, then there will be happiness. But Bhagavad Gita is telling, no, it is not true. When the senses are meeting sense objects, it is not the source of happiness, but rather it is a source of misery, because it has a beginning and an end. Don't absorb in this kind of happiness. Now, because mind is absorbed in this, he is thinking that this is happiness. Let me give you an example. Let's say there is a new music which is released, new material, nice orchestra or nice, beautiful, pleasing sound, and we are hearing that. When we are hearing that, we feel, wow, this is so great, so wonderful. We hear it once, we get some happiness. We hear it twice, we get some happiness. We hear it thrice, we get some happiness. We hear it 10 times, we get happiness. We hear it 1,000 times. The same music, if we are going on hearing for 1,000 times, mind is not finding happiness. Why it is not finding happiness? The reason it is not finding happiness, even though the senses and the sense objects are still the same. The ear is same, the same music is being played, but I am hearing it multiple times. I am fed up of with this. I am bored with that. Why? The reason is we were getting happiness in that state because the mind was temporarily absorbed. If the mind is temporarily absorbed, then it is experiencing that, it is actually a state of sat. So it is experiencing that happiness. The real happiness doesn't lie in that senses meeting in sense objects, but rather it lies in that state of absorption which we are getting even in the material world. The example which the scriptures give is that of the musk deer, right? The musk deer, it searches for that fragrant musk all over the world. Where is that beautiful fragrance coming? Where is it coming? It goes around running. And ultimately, when it is not finding the musk, it out of tired boredom, exhaustion, it quits its body. Actually, the musk lies inside him. The happiness is a within phenomena. When we absorb in spirit, when we absorb in the Supreme Absolute Truth, we will be happy. When we come in association of devotees, when we hear Krishna Katha, when we read the books like Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, when we take prasadam, when we participate in kirtan, why we feel happy? We feel happy because everything is related to the Supreme Absolute Truth. The mind becomes absorbed in that. That is the reason we feel happy. Sometimes you see when people come, they have no understanding of Krishna consciousness. They're just coming for the first time, visiting here. They have no idea what is this process. Yet they see that devotees are happy. They are just enjoying. They are just participating in kirtan and dancing and jumping. They automatically also feel happiness, even though they don't know the process. Why does that happen? Because the mind gets absorbed. Wherever the mind gets absorbed, the mind becomes happy. And the process of absorbing the mind in the Supreme Absolute Truth permanently is Bhakti Yogam. Very simple. Bhakti Yogam Adhokshajam. Very interesting, these words which Prabhupada has used, Vedavyas has used here is very, very powerful. Anartha upasamam shakshat bhakti yogam adhokshaje. Bhakti yogam is the linking process of devotional service. In 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the 13th or 14th verse, there is a very nice definition, not nice definition exactly, nice line which Prabhupada uses, that bhakti is simple, it is pure, and it is perfect. Just see the exact thing what Prabhupada uses there. He says bhakti is, give me 1 second. It's in the 8th chapter, 14th verse. Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. Sorry, I don't know what I said before that. Perfect and something else I said, but the translation, the exact line in the purport is very simple and pure and easy to perform. Actually, if we are simple in our life, it is simple for the simple. Very simple in our heart. If we just engage in, if we just bring Krishna in our lives, if we invite Krishna in our life, life will be very blissful. But we complicate things, we make matter complicated, thinking it is not just bhakti, it is some outwardish thing that we do, And in that outwardish thing, when we are trying to achieve perfection, we often fail miseries. We don't get happiness. Genuinely, a person doesn't feel contented in life. How does this process begin? That also very nicely Prabhupada explains in the purport, if you see that statement, that revival of the dormant affection of love of God does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting. It is a great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. The affection for the Lord, the dormant affection for the Lord can be revived by this process of hearing and chanting. First is hearing and chanting the name of the Lord in association of devotees. When we come in association of devotees and when we hear and when we chant and when we practice, then we naturally get into this bhakti. Now, one thing, so of course the process of bhakti is very simple, can be followed. As Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport of 8th chapter, it is very simple and pure and easy to perform. It is not complicated, unlike so many processes which we see that, if it is, what is the verse in Bhagavad Gita which says how Jnana Yoga is so difficult? Dehabadbhir avapatya, what is that verse? Asakta hi sakto. 12.5. You know, not 12th chapter fully. Klesho adhikatarastesha. Klesho adhikatarastesam abhyakta sakta chetasam abhyakta hi gatir dukkham dukkha dehabadbhir avapyate. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham. Actually, for the embodied living entity, no other process is easy because we are not able to control our mind. We are not able to control our senses. Even though we are trying, we are failing. For an embodied living entity, the process of jnana is very difficult. Abhyakta sakta chetasam, abhyakta hi gatir dukkham. It is very painful. Whereas this is simple, pure and easy to perform. That is why in the 9th chapter it is said, it is susukum kartum avyayam. But then the problem is, of course we spoke about anartha and how we got into this, in the definition of happiness and how the matter, when the mind, which is the intermediate thing between soul and matter, is absorbed in material happiness, we do unwanted things which are not required in our life. And the process of purifying it starts with the process of hearing and chanting in association of devotees. Still, there is one question which remains to be answered, and that is, I am still conditioned and I have accepted this material body. I am not as pure as a pure devotee. How will I engage in devotional service? Because engaging in devotional service is also not that easy as it appears. And that is very beautifully explained by Kapila Dev, and when he is explaining about the material nature in 3rd canto, 27th chapter, the 1st verse. Very interesting verse, pay attention to this. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakriti sthopi purusho najyate prakriter gunaihi avikarad akritratvan nirgunat jalakavat. This verse has a clue as to how we should engage in devotional service. Prakriti sthopi purusho. Purusha here is referring to living entities. Even the living entity is in the midst of this prakriti, in the modes of material nature. We are so much dependent, or we are so much influenced by the modes of material nature, that even if the sun doesn't rise, our moods change. So if we are here in this conditioned material world where we have accepted this body, which is a curse, which we've been given this body, how will we come out of this influence of modes of material nature? So here it is mentioned, Prakriti sthopi purusho. Even though the living entity is fixed in the midst of this conditioned world, in this material world, najyate prakriter gunaihi. Najyate prakriter gunaihi is, he will not be affected by these gunas if he does these two things. Avikarad akritratvan nirgunat jalarakavat. So what is these two things? He is telling, when the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship. Avikarad and akritratatvad, by freedom from proprietorship. One is, if he is engaging in devotional service, avikarat, understanding that he is spirit soul. If see, theoretical knowledge is not enough. We all know that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. Like Prabhupada gives the example that a scientist may have some important postulates or a theory, but if he doesn't prove it in a lab, or if there is no experimental evidence, then that theory is of no use. So avikarad and akritratvan. Avikarad is without change, understanding that we are spirit soul and acting on that platform, and without being by freedom from proprietorship. This is a very important thing. We always think we are the karta, we are doing these things, because of me this is happening. Actually we are nothing, we are simply an instrument in the hands of the Lord. When we stop taking proprietorship, the claim for proprietorship, we will be engaged in devotional service despite being in this material world, in the influence of this material world. The personality of Godhead Kapila continued, when the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as there is an example which is given, as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water. Vishnu, Hare Krishna. The sun's reflection on the water, when it is there, if the water is it's fluctuating, or if the water is, there is a ripple or the waves, then is it that the sun affected by that ripple or the waves of the water? No. The sun is remaining still aloof, even though the reflection on the water is quivering or it is going through that. Similarly, even if I have accepted this material body and I am there in the midst of this material world, where the three modes of material nature are acting, if I act avikarad and akritratvan, if I act without being changed, understanding my true position and without claiming proprietorship, then I can continue to remain engaged in devotional service. This particular concept is explained by Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita also. It's a very beautiful verse which says, Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhi asiddhayo samabhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Perform your duty equipoised. You may say that this is difficult, I have a human body, I am not attracted, I am not able to do, but you have to perform your duty. Yogastha, but being situated in transcendence. You stay equipoised is nothing but yogastha. By situating in transcendence, kuru karmani, do your duties. Sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Many times our motivation for doing things is driven by whether I'll be successful or not, even in devotional life. Whether I'll get some result or not. No, sangam tyaktva, as a matter of duty, remaining in devotional life, fixed in transcendence, when somebody engages in devotional service without being attached to success or failure, that is called yoga. Samatvam yoga uchyate. So the problem statement is there, what is anartha which is there, which is superfluous, and the solution which is also given is bhakti yoga, which begins by the process of hearing and chanting in association of devotees. But I would like to conclude the session today with this one statement of Prabhupada. It's a solid punch which Prabhupada has given in this purport, and that is, revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, He may endow him with His loving transcendental service. It's a very important thing. First of all, our hearing is mechanical. We come to Bhagavatam class, the first thing happens is Nidra. Nidra Devi doesn't leave us, spare us, because this is the material world's kingdom. This is Maya Devi's kingdom. Somebody wants to become devotee, there are so many impediments. Right? Otherwise, mind will give this justification. I have so many important things to do in life. Somebody comes, also runs away. Comes here, also can't sit. So many challenges. So Prabhupada is saying, revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting. Mechanically, we get up in the morning also we chant. Or mechanically we sit here and here, but our mind is somewhere else. Physically body is present, but mind is going somewhere else. The affection, the love of Godhead in heart will not be aroused by this, by just mechanical system of hearing and chanting. But as Prabhupada is saying, it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. And how do you get the causeless mercy of the Lord? When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee. This is the key, this is the clue. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, He may endow him with His loving transcendental service. It's a big thing, very big thing. Of course, Prabhupada says in the next line that even if somebody is hearing, just hearing, transcendental knowledge he doesn't know, he just has taken up to this process of hearing and chanting mechanically, still that will mitigate all the material miseries. That is given even just by hearing and coming, because we are directly coming in touch with the Supreme Absolute Truth. Mind gets absorbed and all these miseries will go. But that is not enough to arouse the love of Godhead. It cannot. Just because we are chanting or we are just attending some class mechanically, that will not come, because it depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. And Prabhupada is saying the whole key is, am I genuinely sincere? Or I'm trying to, just because somebody has asked me, somebody will question me, somebody is looking at me, I'm just coming and attending. Better to attend, no. We'll avoid all this conflicts in life. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, He may endow him with His loving transcendental service. This is the glory of devotional service. This is the glory of engaging in devotional service, and this is the glory which is mentioned in this wonderful literature called Srimad Bhagavatam. Anarthopasamam sakshat bhakti yoga madhokshaje lokasya jananto vidvams chakre sattvata samhita. That is why Vedavyas has compiled this wonderful literature which is available for us. But as I said at the beginning, when the doctor is giving the medicine, because the condition of disease is so strong and severe, it doesn't even allow us to take the medicine properly. We don't have value for this medicine. And those persons are most unfortunate because they don't really know what is good for them, and they while away this wonderful human form of life. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The last line of the translation, Srila Prabhupada is saying that our knowledge depends upon the devotional service.
Not translation, purport.
Yes, purport. The last line of purport. So this means that it is also starting from the same means 9 process of the devotional service. It is also starting from the hearing.
Yeah, in the famous 2 verses of Bhagavatam, where it is mentioned, Savaipum Sam Parodharmo Yato Bhakti Radhokshaje Ahetuki Apratihata Yayatma Suprasidati. It's a must. If you really want to become satisfied in life, you must engage in devotional service. And the way to engage in devotional service is Ahetuki Apratihata. Ahetuki, there is no cause, causeless and uninterruptedly. Then you will be satisfied. Yayatma Suprasidati. And the next verse he says, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Chatadahetukam. If you engage in devotional service, the required transcendental knowledge will automatically manifest. The detachment, that is, if the detachment to material world is not coming, that means we are not engaging in proper devotional service. If you are engaged in proper devotional service, as given by a pure devotee spiritual master, automatically, in heart, naturally detachment will come. How is it that somebody is engaged in devotional service yet is having desires to engage in material world? It's because he's not following the process properly. If somebody follows the process of hearing, chanting, all these processes properly, naturally he'll get detached. That is exactly what anartha is, because our mind is still absorbed in matter. It's a materialistic mind which is looking for happiness in this material world by the process of sense gratification. But we should not be hopeless. The hope is if we accelerate this process, if we come in association of devotees and hear this Krishna Katha from the mouth of a pure devotee spiritual master, then it is like Prabhupada gives the example. You have turned off the fan, but still the fan is running. Still there are, it takes time for the fan to come to standstill. Like that, even though, I have taken to this process of devotional service, still the anarthas have not completely gone. It's saying anartha upasamam sakshat bhakti yogam adhokshaje. It will immediately mitigate, but we've been hearing, we've been reading, it has not gone. Doesn't mean that the process doesn't work. Process works. We have made sufficient progress compared to what we were at the beginning before taking up to Krishna consciousness. So many anarthas we've been able to overcome. But the process can be accelerated if we follow it 100%.
Krishna Prabhu. So for devotees who are young, who may be going to like school.
What is the definition of young?
I'm saying that
Okay.
who may be going to school, where the atmosphere is totally different, and so every day, if you consider the time, probably 70 to 80% of the times they may be amidst people who are not even bothered about God consciousness. How can they take it up seriously and be aware even when they're in such places?
Process of devotion is not different for people of different ages. If it is a child, if it is a old man, or if it is a young man, it has to be different. It is not true. The process of devotion begins with the same, in this wandering world, if somehow or other, if somebody comes in touch with a devotee, he hears about the Supreme Absolute Truth. So, Brahmanda Brahmite Kaun Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasada Pai Bhaktirada. One book, one association with devotee. Something he hears, something goes. And based on his prarabdha karma, his, the atmosphere that he is in, that eagerness or that hankering arouses in the heart. And it continues. So whether he's in school, whether he's in working condition, it's all conditioning. Right? The conditioning, the nature of conditioning changes based on the age that we are in. But everybody is conditioned. Somebody thinks at certain age that he should study only. Somebody thinks he should play only. Somebody thinks he should go after opposite sex. He should get married. Somebody thinks he should work only. Somebody thinks I should take care of my family children. So that doesn't change. The shattering of the illusion happens when somebody hears the pure devotee's words. When the pure devotee's words go inside the ear holes, it breaks the illusion. The illusion can only be broken by that way. There is no other way. But to be able to receive that, to be able to accept that, one has to meet some devotee, take some prasadam, come to temple, attend in kirtan, something happens. Then he becomes prepared to listen. When he comes to that stage, like that verse of Prithu Maharaj, where he says, because the pure devotee carries the Supreme Lord in their heart. When they vibrate the glories of the Supreme Lord, it goes and touches the lotus feet of Krishna, and the dust particle of the of Lord's lotus feet comes as a slap to the sleeping living entity. And that, like a sand, if it comes and hits you, then you suddenly become awake, you become aware of your constitutional position. That is the only way. There is no other way. Of course, then he takes up to this process of chanting, which is where he is directly in contact with the Supreme Absolute Truth, and things change. Okay. No other question, we'll stop here. Granthra Srimad